Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, right? Yeah. They're going back and forth. And Jamil Hill says by the time Angel Reese is done, she's going to be the Michael Jordan of WNBA.
She said about Angel Reese?
She said Angel Reese, by the time she retires, can you pull up this quote? She said, by the time she retires, she will be the MJ of, go to Jamil Hill, type in Jamil Hill, yeah. She says, by the time she retires, Jamil Hill has made a bold prediction that...
Imagine walking into a building where every single person inside wants to see you fall. Not just lose, fall. They want to see you rattled, shaken, exposed. They want to see the hype crumble in real time, right there on national television, in front of millions of people watching at home. The air is thick before you even lace up your sneakers. The noise hits you like a wall the second you step through the tunnel. 20,000 people packed into every corner of that arena, fueled by months of rivalry, months of frustration, months of watching someone they despise get praised, celebrated, and crowned the future of women's basketball. This wasn't just a game, this was an ambush, and Caitlin Clark walked straight into it with a smile. What happened over the next few hours wasn't just a basketball victory, it was a statement, a surgical, methodical, absolutely ruthless dismantling of everything Angel Reese had been building. The brand, the confidence, the Michael Jordan comparisons, all of it reduced to rubble on a hardwood floor, while the crowd that had shown up to bury Clark sat in stunned, embarrassed silence. By the time the final buzzer sounded, those 20,000 screaming fans had nothing left to say, not a single word, because what they had just witnessed wasn't something you could spin, argue about, or dismiss. It was history, and history has a way of shutting everyone up. But to truly understand why this performance hit different, why it felt so much bigger than just a regular season win, you have to go back to the 48 hours before tip-off, when the media circus was in full swing and someone decided to say something they really, truly should not have said. Angel Reese has never been someone who shies away from the spotlight. That's actually one of the things her fans love most about her. She's loud, she's confident, she thrives in the drama, and she knows exactly how to keep herself relevant in the sports media cycle. She's built an entire brand around being the anti-Clark, the scrappy, passionate, unapologetic counterweight to what many people see as the polished, marketable face of the WNBA's new era. And for a while, that strategy worked. The trash talk clicks generated millions of views. Every interaction between the two players became appointment television. Every game between Indiana and Chicago felt like a heavyweight bout, with fans on both sides ready to go to war over their player. But heading into the second season, something shifted. The trash talk escalated, the claims got bigger, and then came the moment that set the entire sports world on fire: Angel Reese and the Michael Jordan comparison. Now, let's be clear about something. Comparing yourself to Michael Jordan, even loosely, even in a metaphorical sense, is one of the most dangerous moves in sports. Because the second you invite that comparison, you are inviting everyone with a microphone and a platform to measure you against the greatest to ever do it. And if your on-court performance doesn't match the energy of that comparison, the blowback is going to be catastrophic. Angel Reese either didn't realize that, or she simply didn't care. Either way, she walked into that narrative with both feet, and the sports media was waiting with open arms. The response was immediate. Analysts, commentators, and fans across every platform tore into the comparison with everything they had. But nobody, and this is important, nobody hit harder than SBN's Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. went on live television, looked directly into the camera, and delivered what can only be described as a complete verbal execution. He didn't get emotional, he didn't yell for the sake of yelling, he was calm, deliberate, and absolutely ruthless in his assessment. He made it crystal clear, you are not Michael Jordan, you are not even Caitlin Clark.
What you are doing, he said, is confusing popularity with generational greatness, and there is a massive, canyon-sized difference between the two.
Look at that pause. It sounded like she drunk a gallon of water in between that pause.
It happens like we know any other time like Angel will make the shot. I mean, she knows she'll make the shot, but in that moment, you just got to encourage your teammates. Like, no one person lost us the game. It's a team effort, and
she's frustrated. She's trying to be nice. We know she'll make the shot. No, you don't know. The last 4 games now, Angel Reese is shooting less than 25% on layups. You don't know she'll make it. And you know who else don't know? This man right.
He pointed out the stats. He pointed out the layup percentage. Angel Reese in the 4 games leading up to this matchup was shooting less than 25% on layups. 25%. Those are the kinds of numbers that don't support a Michael Jordan conversation. Those are the kinds of numbers that when the lights come on in a hostile arena and the pressure hits its absolute peak become a very serious problem. Stephen A. warned her. The fans should have paid attention, but the crowd that packed into that arena was running on emotion, not logic. They were there to see Reese dominate. They were there to see Clark crack. And for the first few minutes of that game, it genuinely felt like that might be exactly what was going to happen. The moment Caitlin Clark stepped onto that court, the arena lost its mind. The boos were so loud they were literally vibrating the broadcast cameras. You could feel it through the screen, that raw, overwhelming wall of noise designed to get inside a player's head and dismantle their focus before the game even gets going. Every time Clark touched the ball, every single time the crowd erupted. They were throwing everything at her. Signs, insults, the full theatrical energy of 20,000 people who had decided, long before tip-off, that tonight was the night Caitlin Clark would finally be exposed. And here's what makes Clark genuinely different from almost every other player in the league right now. Most players in that situation, under that kind of pressure, in front of a hostile crowd of that size, would at least flinch. You'd see a hesitation in the shot. You'd see the eyes darting around, scanning the crowd, feeling the weight of the moment. You'd see the mental game start to affect the physical one. Clark didn't flinch, not once. She did something far more dangerous. She absorbed every single boo, every insult, every piece of hate that crowd threw at her, and she converted it. She turned it into fuel. You could see it in her body language from the very first possession. The way she moved, the way she called for the ball, the way she set her feet and looked at the basket. She wasn't nervous. She was locked in. She was ready. And the crowd, without realizing it, was doing exactly what she needed them to do. They were waking her up. While Clark was quietly catching fire, something else was happening on the other end of the court that nobody in that building wanted to acknowledge. Angel Reese, the player who had spent the previous 48 hours leaning into Jordan comparisons and pre-game bravado, was struggling. Not in a small, fixable way, in a deeply fundamental, genuinely alarming way. The layups weren't falling. Here's the thing about missed layups. One missed layup in a game is bad luck. 2 in a row starts to feel like a problem. 3 consecutive missed wide-open layups in the span of 6 minutes in a nationally televised rivalry game against the player you've been publicly talking about for months. That's not bad luck anymore. That's a crisis. And that's exactly what unfolded in the first half for Angel Reese. She came out with a plan. She wanted to establish herself in the post, demand the ball, use her physical presence to bully her way to the basket, and rack up the kind of highlight reel finishes that would justify every big claim she'd made in the build-up. The script was written, the stage was set, the crowd was ready to explode. But the ball kept rolling out.
3 times in 6 minutes, Reese got herself into position. 3 times she had the kind of looks that NBA and WNBA players make in their sleep. Wide open, no contest, just her and the basket. And 3 times the ball rattled around and came back out. The energy in the arena shifted in a way that was almost painful to watch. You could feel the crowd trying to hold on to their confidence, trying to rally, trying to convince themselves that this was just a slow start, that the real Angel Reese was coming. But the real Angel Reese was already there, and she was struggling. The post-game numbers would eventually back up what the eye test was screaming in real time. The less than 25% layup rate that Stephen A. had referenced wasn't an anomaly, it was a pattern. And patterns don't fix themselves in the biggest moments. They tend to get worse. Her coach, Carl Semico, was visibly frustrated on the sideline. The pauses in his post-game press conference, long, uncomfortable, loaded pauses, told you everything you needed to know about how he felt watching his franchise player pass up open teammates, force contested attempts, and come up empty over and over again. He'd said publicly that he knew she could make the shot. The stats said otherwise. And the game was proving the stats right in the most brutal, public way possible. Meanwhile, on the other end of the court, Caitlin Clark was just getting started. There's a moment in every great performance where the player stops trying to make things happen and things just start happening, where every decision is correct before it's even made, where the game slows down and the player speeds up and everything they touch turns to gold. Caitlin Clark found that moment in the second quarter and never let it go. It started with a three-pointer from 35 feet out, logo range. The kind of shot that most players in the league won't even attempt in a regular practice session, let alone in a hostile road game with the season's narrative on the line. Clark caught it, set her feet, and fired. The ball didn't even feel the rim. It snapped through the net clean, and the front row, the loudest, most aggressive section of an already deafening building, went completely quiet for the first time all night. That shot wasn't just 2 points. That shot was a message. From there, the floodgates opened. Clark started threading passes through the defense that seemed to operate on a completely different spatial understanding than what anyone else on the court had access to. She was seeing angles that didn't exist on paper, finding teammates in stride, hitting them in exactly the right spot at exactly the right time. The assists were piling up so fast that the statisticians on the broadcast team were genuinely scrambling to keep pace. Every time they updated the numbers, the number had already moved again. But here's the part of this performance that doesn't get talked about enough when people discuss what Clark did that night. The dirty work, the stuff that doesn't show up in the highlight package, but absolutely shows up in the box score and in the energy of a winning team. She was crashing the boards, against taller players, against players who had every physical advantage in terms of size and positioning. She was flying into the paint, throwing her body into contact, and ripping rebounds right out of the hands of players who had no business giving them up to someone her size. She was doing the unglamorous, painful, gritty work that separates players who want the credit from players who want the win. And that, more than any of the spectacular assists, more than the long-range bombs, was what made this performance truly historic. By the midpoint of the third quarter, the graphic flashed on the screen. Career-high triple-double. Points, assists, rebounds. All three categories, all at career-best levels in the most hostile environment she had faced all season against the team and the player she has the most contentious history with in the entire league. The arena that had arrived ready to bury her was now watching her make history inside their own building, and there was absolutely nothing they could do about it.
At this point, the crowd wasn't booing anymore. They were watching. And that shift from hostile aggression to reluctant, speechless witnessing was the most telling sign of all that something genuinely remarkable was happening. If the first 3 quarters had been a slow, grinding erosion of Chicago's confidence, the fourth quarter was the avalanche. Indiana outscored Chicago 31-19 across the fourth quarter and overtime combined. That's not a close game that got away at the end. That's a comprehensive, systematic dismantling of a team that had already been mentally broken long before the final buzzer. Chicago had chances. That's the brutal part of this story for Reese and her teammates. They weren't blown out from the opening tip. They stayed competitive. They showed fight. There were moments where it genuinely felt like they might be able to steal this one, even on a night when nothing was going their way. They even had possession with a chance to win the game in regulation. And then Angel Reese got the ball at the rim. The shot went up, the arena held its breath, and the ball rolled out. That moment, that single missed layup that could have won the game in regulation, became the defining image of Angel Reese's night. It encapsulated everything:
The pre-game bravado, the Michael Jordan comparisons, the 2 hours of hostile crowd support, all of it riding on one shot at the basket from close range, and it didn't go down. The post-game press conference was something else entirely. Reese's coach sat in front of reporters and tried to find something positive in the wreckage. The pauses were extraordinary, long, heavy, clearly pained silences between sentences that said more than any words could. He talked about being right there. He talked about the players giving everything they had. He talked about needing one more bounce to go their way. And every single person in that room knew exactly which bounce he was talking about. When a reporter gently but pointedly asked what his message had been to Angel after she smoked the layup that could have ended it in regulation, the coach paused again. The room actually laughed, not cruelly, more in the way that people laugh when something is so uncomfortable and so obvious that there's nothing else to do. He collected himself and said they just had to move on to the next play. But you don't just move on from that, not in a rivalry this heated. Not when the entire narrative of the season has been built around this exact matchup. Not when your star player spent the week leading up to the game invoking the name of the greatest basketball player who ever lived. Reese herself didn't speak to reporters after the game. She didn't address the performance, the missed shots, the narrative, or any of it. She left the building in silence, which in many ways was the loudest statement of the night from her side of the court. But before all of that, before the empty post-game podium, before the coach's pained pauses, before the recap shows had their field day, there was one moment that captured everything. Late in overtime, with the game still hanging in the balance and the remnants of that crowd noise still pushing through the arena's walls, Caitlin Clark caught the ball beyond the arc. Angel Reese was right there. The crowd, even depleted by the weight of watching their team fall apart, found whatever energy they had left and threw it at her. Clark didn't rush, she didn't hesitate. She set her feet, gathered herself, and released a cold-blooded three-pointer directly over Angel Reese's outstretched hand. The ball traveled through the air in what felt like slow motion, and then it snapped through the net, clean.
No celebration, no yelling, no flexing. Caitlin Clark just turned around and looked at the crowd. 20,000 people who had spent 2 full hours screaming insults, holding up disrespectful signs, pouring every ounce of negative energy they had into trying to rattle this one player. 20,000 people went completely, utterly silent. You could hear the squeak of sneakers on the hardwood. You could hear the players calling out to each other. You could hear the ambient noise of a building that had just moments earlier been one of the loudest environments in women's basketball. That look she gave the crowd, calm, unbothered, almost amused, said more than any trash talk ever could. She hadn't responded to the boos with words. She hadn't responded to Angel Reese's pregame media tour with a press conference of her own. She had responded with a career-high triple-double and a dagger 3 in overtime. She had responded with history. And the crowd had no answer for that. There was nothing left to say. Here's the thing about what happened in that arena that will matter long after the highlight packages stop trending and the social media arguments move on to the next thing. This game didn't just settle one rivalry matchup, it reframed the entire conversation around both of these players and what they represent. Caitlin Clark proved something that stats and award ceremonies can suggest but never quite confirm on their own, that she performs better under pressure, not worse. That the hostile environment, the booing crowd, the pre-game narrative designed to build doubt, none of it lands on her the way it would land on a normal player. She doesn't just survive the biggest moments, she needs them, she feeds on them. And the more energy an opposing crowd pours into trying to break her, the more dangerous she becomes. That is genuinely rare. That is the kind of mental makeup that separates good players from truly generational ones. As for Angel Reese, and this is said with full acknowledgement of how gifted she is and how much she brings to this league in terms of energy, personality, and marketability, the Michael Jordan conversation needs to be put away. permanently. Not because she isn't talented, not because she doesn't have a real future in this league, but because that comparison created a standard that she was simply not ready to meet on the night it mattered most. And when the pressure came, the shots didn't fall. The narrative collapsed faster than anyone expected. She's 22 years old. She has time to grow, time to improve, time to find a version of herself that doesn't need to borrow someone else's legend to feel legitimate. The best thing that can happen for Angel Reese right now is for the Michael Jordan chapter to close and for an Angel Reese chapter to open. One written on her own terms, defined by her own achievements, not measured against a comparison that was always going to hurt her more than help her. But that's a conversation for another day, because right now, the story belongs entirely to one person. Caitlin Clark walked into a building where 20,000 people wanted her to fail. She listened to every single boo. She felt the weight of every hostile stare, every disrespectful sign, every moment of theatrical aggression that crowd had to offer. And then she took all of it, turned it into jet fuel, and flew straight to the top of the WNBA record books.
Stephen A. Smith warned them, the crowd should have known better. You simply do not poke the bear. Because when the bear bites back, it bites back with a career-high triple-double in overtime, a mute-button 3 in Angel Reese's face, and 20,000 stunned people left wondering how they let this happen in their own building. The rivalry is absolutely still alive, but after tonight, everyone knows exactly who holds the power in it. Drop a comment below. Do you think Angel Reese can come back from this, or has Clark officially taken over the entire WNBA conversation? Let's talk about it.